Well, welcome everybody to the February online program for the alumni of the Sunshine Coast Health Center up here in Powell River, British Columbia. And in this month's online program, we're going to talk about some of the ideas of Tom Greening. And just to give you some background on Dr. Greening, he's quite a remarkable character. He's a very friendly fellow. He's got lots of energy, even though he must be pretty close to 80. He still has his private practice, which he's been, as he says, he's been operating out of the same office for 40 years. He teaches in the PhD program at Saybrook University. And he's just full of life, a great sense of humor. Oh, he's a poet too. Yeah. He's forever giving out his poetry. And he's used to be an editor of a big journal. Just a remarkable man, but remarkable also in the sense that he's almost 80 and he's still totally active. Like, it's quite remarkable. Anyway, Dr. Greening is what we would technically call an existential psychologist. And what that means is basically this. So some people, what they do is they develop theories, right? And then they test these theories with people to see if they're right. Well, the existentialists are basically the exact opposite. What they do is they look at people, these living, breathing human beings, and they try to figure out what are the fundamental things going on with these people. So they're not coming at it from a theoretical perspective at all. They're actually looking at these people, or what I say, they have dirt under their fingernails, right? They actually take the starting point, that the fact that we all exist, and then what does this mean? And according to Dr. Greening and a lot of other people, all of us face challenges in life. We have one challenge, for example, the fact that we know we're going to die. I think we're the only species that's actually aware of that. So how do you live a good life knowing for a fact that you're going to die? This is an existential question. Right? There are questions: is the world meaningful, or is it absurd? Is it a place that actually has no meaning? Lots of people today don't believe in God. They don't believe there is anything, any basis, any standard on which to live a meaningful life. So we have people like Hitler and Stalin, and they had their version, and then Mother Teresa has her version, and the Dalai Lama has his version, and your next door neighbor has their version, and it goes on and on. What do you base things on, right? What is the standard upon which you do things in life? And there are other things such as that we face with is loneliness. And I'm not talking about loneliness of having no one to go out on a date with on Friday night for the movie. I'm talking about like this feeling which pretty much every addict I've ever met in my life has had this feeling, this deep, profound feeling that I am alone in the universe. And this is true for all of us, that at some time in life, all of us are faced with this thing of being lonely, being separate from others, desiring this connection with others, but at the same time knowing that we're fundamentally different and fundamentally alone. All of us are unique. Nobody shares, no one really can know what's going on inside of me except for me, because we have the separateness from other people. So there are these, what we call fundamental motivations, these, or Dr. Greening would call them existential challenges. And all of us are faced with that. So I thought this month what we do is we'd look at some of these challenges that Dr. Greening has proposed. And we'll take one per week. And we'll start out with the one about life and death. So Dr. Greening says, okay, all of us are faced with this thing, right? We know we're going to die. So how do we live our lives? Well, some people, he says, just pretend death doesn't exist. They don't even think about it. It doesn't even enter their consciousness. These are the kind of people, for example, who might engage in very high risk activities where maybe they're put right on the edge of life and death. I was watching a television show the other day on mountain climbing, and these kind of mountain climbers were those people. They didn't take the safe route to anything. Everything was always on the edge. They knew that one tiny little slip, and that would be the end of them. So some people, that's how they approach life, with this death is really not a big deal to them. As you know, from active addiction, for a lot of the clients here, this seemed to be a big part of it. We've had a lot of clients, for example, who push the envelope with the drugs. Always to the edge, always to the edge, just to a point where if they didn't get it right, they could actually die, right? And this was a thrill, a rush. Okay? So some people take that approach. Other people basically start dwelling in death, becoming preoccupied by it. And these are the kinds of people we would find thinking about suicide, for example. Or these are the kinds of people who basically have resigned themselves to the fact that, well, I might die. So, really, what's the point of all of this? Or that, as I was writing this out in the written portion, I was thinking of that Woody Allen movie where the little kid, I think he can't be like more than 10 years old, he goes to school, he learns that the Earth is going to be destroyed, I think when the sun turns into a supernova or something. Anyway, we're all dead. So he comes back and tells his parents, well, I'm not going to school anymore because what's the point? We're all going to die. That kind of death, that dwelling on death, this obsessing on death. So some people take that approach. And then there are other people that Dr. Greening say have a much more healthy approach. And this approach is an awareness of death, a recognition that it's there, so we're not going to pretend it doesn't exist or that it's not meaningful. A recognition that it exists, but no dwelling on it, no being obsessed by it, so that it's not this morbid kind of living. And the idea is, if you know you're going to death, if death is looking over your left shoulder, maybe this will give you some motivation to go on and start living, right? Wake up. We better get a move on here. We've talked in the online program about people who get some diseases. And the ones we hear about, the ones advertised in the paper, or publicized in the paper, are things, this is, oh my God, I have this fatal disease, what a horrible thing. But a lot of people actually say, oh my Lord, I have this disease, I better get on with the business of living. And so it becomes an impetus to start feeling alive, to start grabbing life by the horns, right? To start deciding, well, what is important to me and what should I do to live this full and rewarding life? So that's the third way that people can confront death. So anyway, these are interesting things to think about, right? And for you to think about, what is your approach when you think about the fact that you're mortal? I mean, how do you live life? Is it an impetus for you to get on with the business of living? Do you dismiss it and simply pretend it doesn't exist and do all this high-risk stuff? Or are you so overwhelmed by it that you become obsessed with death and getting all stressed out and all that other stuff? Anyway, that's this week's online program, and we'll be back next week with another of Dr. Greening's ideas.